Hi, my name is Lewis, and I've decided to do a series of videos about foster care. Mostly because you see videos that I'm biased, by the way. I was in foster care, but most videos talk about how terrible foster care is, and I think that's an unfair assumption, like a really unfair, because most foster parents are doing the best with the tools that they have. The unfortunate thing is that their tools are broken. And due to their tools being broken, they've the system is broken. But because the system is broken that doesn't mean that the people in it are broken. People in it are often doing what they can with the tools that they have. And if the tools that they have just doesn't cut it, then oftentimes we get gross um, you know, violations of human rights, even because the system just isn't designed to handle what it's setting out to do, because the system is needs to be hasn't been reformed. There hasn't been a huge cross the state foster care reform since like the 80s. And unfortunately, due to modern technologies changing cultural things, the reforms have stayed behind the problem, because when you tackle something that was and the reforms happened 40 years ago, things change in 40 years. That would be like trying to still use the same laws that for environmental reform from the 1940s. It just wouldn't work, because new technologies and new problems have presented themselves that people in the 1940s didn't even think of. And that's what I'm about to do a video series on. It's going to be five major problems of foster care. And then in between those things, I'm going to give what foster care does right, which to balance it out, because you give five terrible things about it, but there's also good things about it, and that's what needs to be shown. So I hope. Oh, and by the way, if you're all wondering, I will leave um, evidence and things, like actual social things, in the description, because that's that way you don't think that I personally am being biased. I will leave actual sources to any claim that I make in the description of my videos, because that's what responsible people do. And I'm just letting you know. So there's going to be five of my point videos that I'm going to do. I'm going to at least try to release one every day this week, and hopefully people will see this. If they don't, it's just going to be me venting, which is okay, because people need to do that. And the five ones are how foster care tends to go against the medication principle, the maximum amount of benefit with the least amount of medication. In other words, most doctors in the modern world, when we find a more efficient medication, we just use the inefficient ones, because we don't need them anymore. And they're usually only still prescribed if you don't actually, like if you're allergic or have a bad reaction to the modern med, because that's how medication is supposed to work. But in the foster care industry, it doesn't. Okay? One, why foster privatizing foster care was a terrible decision on states' parts, because That one's going to be more of an opinion but I'm going to, because let's face it, they're both terrible, and I'm pretty sure things have improved over being orphanage and group homes and state homes and things. But at the same time, privatizing it made a whole new, unique set of problems that have not been addressed by state law. The the third video is going to be kind of related to the first one, but it's going to be the how there's really no advocacy. There's no child advocate in foster care. They all say that they advocate for the children, but I'm going to show that they actually pretty much advocate for themselves. What is best for the agency or the foster parent or for the state worker is what's going to be done, not what's best for the child. The fourth thing I'm going to show is that foster care does not equip people with the ability to live independently, usually. The foster care rate for suicide, for example, if you're in foster care, you have a 10% chance of killing yourself right off the bat. If you compound this with other issues, like if you're mentally ill or you're abuse alcohol or you're depressed, you have depression or anything like that, and you compound that off to medication, you can get rates of suicide up to some populations of foster kids up to 40 to 50%, which needs to be addressed, but it isn't because they're not in foster care anymore, so it's not their problem. So that's fourth. And fifth and final one is how the selection of foster parents needs to be bettered. Not because foster parents are terrible people. Most of them are great human beings. I mean, they're great. But they don't have the tool set to actually handle their job, which can cause them to have great psychological stress. And foster care agencies just don't care. Foster parents need the following things just as much as children. The children they should have. They need to have a mental evaluation because the stress can literally kill them. They need to have a healthy way to deal with that. And I know that sounds weird. Why would? Because they're adults. But the thing is that most adults aren't taking in random strangers into their house on a 6 to 8 month basis now, are they? No. And that presents a whole thing that they have to have. Like they need to be able to vent to somebody. They need to be able to express their problems. They need basically therapy, like any high stress job does. Most soldiers have therapy, for an example. Most firemen and policemen have therapists because, like any high stress job, you're going to need, you know, ability to get it. And another one, which I know is unpopular, is going to be a minimum income evaluation. Because I believe if you're taking in 4 kids, your income should exceed the poverty line for having 4 kids. If you can only take in 2, you could take in 3, but your ability to take in kids should not be proportional to how many beds you have, but your actual income, because I can have a 4-bedroom house, but only be able to support maybe 2 kids. So, the third, yeah, that fifth video is going to be pretty interesting. Bye.